know who this young gentleman is. It's Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Okay, let's talk about one of the. Let's talk about Vance. Donald Trump is now, since Joe Biden dropped out, as many people have pointed out, is the oldest person ever to be nominated by a major party for president of the United States.
Correct.
And whatever his doctors say in their letters they release, he can't be that healthy of a guy. That means Vance could be president if he and Donald Trump are elected president and vice president. Do you think people are taking that into account enough? Are they acknowledging the potential of President Vance?
No, I think it's totally slept on. I mean, first of all, JD Vance has only been in the Senate for less than 2 years. And that's the sum total of experience in public life. He's extremely young. And as you said, the actuarial math of Donald Trump is that, like, there's a pretty decent chance that JD Vance is actually the president. And it's interesting because one of the things said about Joe Biden when he was the nominee and Kamala Harris was the vice president was Republicans would be like, you might get Kamala Harris. And no one seems to think that's true about JD Vance, but it's not some remote possibility. And I also think the guy is just clearly not ready. I mean, despite the fact that I think he's disqualified himself by eventually spreading blood libel up against people that live in his own home state. I think that he is not ready to be the president of the United States.
Well, let's imagine for a moment that happens.
Let's imagine it.
Let's imagine it for a moment that actually happened. What did we learn tonight about what the Vance presidency would be like?
Well, I don't think we learned it tonight because I think tonight he put on, for most of it, a kind of, he performed reasonableness as well as he could. But I think given his vast record of talking to every right-wing podcast that exists in America, it's very clear that he is sincerely animated by a set of pretty radical beliefs. I think he's kind of radicalized himself about deconstructing the nature of American democracy and the American state to maximize presidential authority and purge the deep state and replace it with a new ruling class. And that's a serious project that he's seriously committed to and has said multiple times.
And so are the people who fund him.
And the people
like
that fund him. Exactly. People like Peter Thiel, who, you know, is not so hot on democracy and has basically kind of cultivated Vance from the time that he was at Yale Law.
Polls before the debate told us things we already know. People generally don't like JD Vance. Like they don't have a personal good vibe from him.
He has the highest negative, you know, the worst favorability rating since Sarah Palin, and they're even worse than Palin.
Okay. Governor Wallace has a high.
He does.
Likability. Donald Trump is 10 points underwater, according to the polls. Kamala Harris just passed over into positive territory. So you got a couple people that the majority of people like. You got a couple people that a lot of people don't like. Does likability matter that much? And when does it matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think likability probably matters less now than 20 years ago when I was covering politics, partly because of how sort of barricaded in the kind of structural polarization is. And I think there's fewer voters that were kind of up for grabs. That said, when you're down to the last few percentage points, I think it does matter. I mean, I think particularly when you're talking about people that are undecided at this point, as a general matter, they're not paying.
The hermits living in a cave somewhere in the middle of the United States who don't know enough yet about Donald Trump.
Correct. They're folks that are not usually paying super close attention to politics. And so I do think basically vibes and likability do matter quite a bit.
I agree. I think, a lot of people are saying, like, why isn't Kamala Harris giving us more details? Why are we only doing a vibe election? But aren't all elections vibe elections? Isn't politics about how you feel about your life will be if this person's in power? Nobody out there is reading the 81-page plan that she put out.
That's the thing. I mean, there's an alchemy to it in terms of what the mix is of details and vibes and ideological disposition and how you identify and where. But ultimately, this idea from people that aren't paying that much attention being like, well, I just got to see more details. I just don't actually believe that's what they actually want to see. I think they're either lying to themselves or they don't know themselves well enough.
Well, we got to take another break here, but don't go away. More Chris Hayes when we return on the Live Late Show.